On April 12, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to journey into outer space, a feat that etched his name into the annals of history. It was clear that the first space flight would be made by a Soviet man, but before his untimely death, Yuri hinted at a stunning revelation, something he had kept secret since that legendary flight. What could the first man in space possibly have to admit? Stay tuned, because this confession might just change everything we thought we knew about his iconic mission. Without any further delay, let's get straight into the story. Yuri Gagarin's pioneering space flight aboard Vostok 1 made him an instant global icon. But as the years passed, whispers began to circulate about a hidden truth, something the Soviet hero had carried with him since that fateful day. Just before his tragic death, Yuri finally broke his silence, admitting something that could alter the story of his historic journey. What was it, and why did he wait so long to reveal it? To understand this, we must first explore Yuri's life and the journey that led him to the stars. Yuri's name is synonymous with space exploration, but before he became the face of Soviet success in the space race, he led a humble life grounded in modest beginnings. His journey from a small village in Russia to the cockpit of Vostok 1 required determination, skill, and the will to break new ground. Let's trace the steps that brought him to the edge of the cosmos. Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin was born on March 9, 1934, in the small village of Klishino, west of Moscow. He grew up during a time of significant upheaval in Soviet Russia, and his family, like many others, suffered under the German invasion during World War II. The Gagarin family was forced from their home when Yuri was just a child, spending years living in a small mud hut after their village was occupied. Despite these challenges, Yuri's parents encouraged education and curiosity. His father, a carpenter, and his mother, a milkmaid, instilled in him the value of hard work and perseverance. Yuri was fascinated by machinery and how things worked. From a young age, he showed an interest in science and technology. It wasn't until later, when he saw an airplane land near his village, that a fire was lit that would guide him toward the skies. As Yuri grew older, his interest in aviation blossomed. After moving to a nearby town for better schooling, he started attending a local technical school. Here, his passion for flying took off when he joined an air club, a state-sponsored flying school that allowed young people to learn basic piloting skills. It was during this time that he first flew in a plane, a moment that left an indelible mark on him. The thrill of taking to the air was intoxicating, and young Yuri knew that he wanted to pursue aviation as a career. His enthusiasm for flying grew with every passing day, and he soon set his sights on becoming a pilot. In 1955, after graduating from the technical school, he was accepted into the Orenburg Aviation School, where he began formal pilot training. The rigorous curriculum tested Yuri's knowledge, stamina, and skill, but he thrived in this environment. His instructors quickly noticed his natural ability, describing him as a determined, disciplined, and skilled pilot, qualities that would serve him well in the years to come. Yuri's path toward the stars continued through his military service. After graduating from the Orenburg School, he became a lieutenant in the Soviet Air Force in 1957, just as the Cold War was reaching new heights. This was a critical period for both the Soviet Union and the United States, as they were locked in a fierce competition for global dominance. Aviation and space exploration became central to this rivalry, and Yuri found himself in the right place at the right time. Stationed at an airbase in Murmansk, Yuri flew MiG-15 jet fighters, honing his piloting skills under some of the most challenging conditions. Flying over the Arctic Circle, he gained valuable experience in harsh weather and under extreme pressure. These qualities would later catch the eye of Soviet officials looking for candidates for a groundbreaking new mission. Yuri's approachable nature, humility, and ability to remain calm under pressure made him an ideal candidate for the historic journey ahead. He wasn't just a good pilot, he was someone people could trust. Training for the first human space flight began in 1960, as the Cold War heated up. The Soviet Union was preparing to achieve a feat that would not only push the boundaries of human endurance, but also prove its dominance in the space race. They were on the verge of sending the first human into space, and a group of elite cosmonauts was being groomed for the mission. This historic mission, little did anyone know that this mission would hold a secret so big that the first human to go to space almost took it to his grave. But we will get there. By the late 1960s, the Saturn V had proven itself as NASA's workhorse, and by early 1969, the Soviets were preparing to launch the N-1. Unlike the Saturn, it was top secret. The Soviet space program knew that sending a person into space was fraught with dangers no human had ever faced. Space was an unfamiliar environment that could kill in an instant if anything went wrong. With this in mind, the cosmonaut candidates were subjected to some of the most rigorous physical and mental preparations ever designed. Physical fitness was non-negotiable. The training involved long endurance sessions, including running, swimming, and weightlifting, to build muscle mass and stamina. The cosmonauts were expected to perform at the peak of human physical capability. They needed the strength to handle the intense G-forces of launch and re-entry, as well as the agility to function in cramped, confined spaces. Training also included extended stays in pressure chambers to simulate high-altitude conditions, exposing them to thin air and oxygen deprivation. The goal was to see how their bodies would react to the stress of space travel, where even breathing was a challenge. But physical conditioning was only half the battle. Mental toughness was just as important, if not more so. Space was unpredictable and unforgiving, and the cosmonauts had to be prepared for isolation, fear, and the unknown. To test their psychological endurance, they were placed in sensory deprivation tanks, dark, soundless, featureless environments where they were forced to remain calm despite the eerie stillness. This training prepared them for the disorienting experience of space, where a cosmonaut would be alone, floating above the Earth with no sense of direction or gravity. Additionally, they were pushed to their psychological limits through simulated emergency scenarios. Instructors intentionally introduced stressful situations during training, such as equipment failures or life-threatening complications, to see how the cosmonauts would react under pressure. They had to maintain composure, think clearly, and act quickly, no matter what was thrown their way. Yuri loved it. His calmness, sharp intellect, and quick decision-making ability set him apart from many of his peers. He was known for maintaining his composure even under the most challenging conditions, which would prove to be a crucial asset later in his career. Physical and mental toughness were essential, but space travel also required an intimate understanding of highly complex technology. The Vostok spacecraft was a groundbreaking feat of engineering, but it was also untested in manned missions. The cosmonauts needed to be fully trained on how to operate every system on board, from navigation to life support. Any malfunction in space could be fatal, and the cosmonaut had to know how to respond. The technical training was exhaustive. The cosmonauts spent countless hours studying all the finer details of the spacecraft's control systems. They learned how to operate the manual controls in case the automatic systems failed. The spacecraft was equipped with numerous instruments, each crucial to maintaining a safe journey, and the cosmonauts had to memorize what each dial, switch, and button did. They also practiced navigating using only the stars and on-board instruments in case of system malfunction. Yuri and his peers had to understand both how the spacecraft worked and why it worked the way it did. This deep technical knowledge was necessary because, once they were in space, there would be no one to help them if something went wrong. Every potential issue, no matter how minor, could mean the difference between life and death. The cosmonauts were drilled on how to handle electrical failures, loss of communication, and the malfunction of crucial onboard systems. They had to be capable of repairing the spacecraft in the vacuum of space, and all of this without panicking. In addition to technical training, they spent extensive time in simulators that created the experience of space flight as closely as possible. The simulations helped prepare them for the specific challenges they would face during launch, orbit, and re-entry. They were designed to mimic the actual conditions inside the Vostok spacecraft, including the vibrations, sounds, and forces of launch. These sessions were vital because they allowed the cosmonauts to experience, in a controlled setting, the chaos of space travel. Still, one of the most critical parts of the training was learning emergency procedures. Space flight was inherently dangerous, and the possibility of things going wrong was very real. The cosmonauts had to be trained to deal with any situation that might arise. Emergency drills included scenarios such as cabin depressurization, a failed orbit insertion, or a fire on board. The cosmonauts practiced how to react to these situations calmly and effectively, understanding that their survival depended on their ability to think clearly in the heat of the moment. There were also specific drills for re-entry, as this was one of the riskiest parts of the mission. A slight error in calculations could result in the spacecraft burning up in the atmosphere or missing the landing zone entirely. The cosmonauts trained for the possibility of landing off course in a remote area, where survival until rescue could be a matter of hours or days. The cosmonauts were taught how to use survival gear, including how to make shelters and obtain food in case they landed in the wilderness. While the cosmonauts worked together during training, there was an unspoken competition among them. Everyone knew that only one would be chosen to be the first human in space, adding an extra layer of intensity to the already challenging regimen. The training program was designed not just to prepare the cosmonauts but also to weed out those who couldn't handle the pressure. Each cosmonaut was aware that every drill, test, and interaction with their superiors was being evaluated. Physical fitness, mental toughness, technical knowledge, and even personality played a role in determining who would be chosen for the historic flight. Soviet leadership, including Chief Designer Sergei Korolev, wanted the best pilot and the right representative for the Soviet Union all in one person. They sought someone who embodied the ideals of the Soviet people: humility, intelligence, and loyalty. As the training drew to a close, the tension among the cosmonauts mounted. They had all undergone the same rigorous regimen, but only one would be selected to take the monumental first step into the unknown.